Hi, welcome to KiwaniTalk. We're a public information program put together by people from the Dearborn Kiwanis Club with lots of help from students and staff here at Dearborn High School. My name is Gary Gardner. Welcome to KiwaniTalk, the longest running cable access television program in the entire world. We're very happy to be at the studios of WDHS at Dearborn High, and today we're talking about Penrickton Center for Blind Children. It's an amazing place, an amazing organization. Some of our people from our club help work out there. We have with us today the new Grand Poobah
I love it.
of Penrickton Center. We have Patricia Obrzut. Patricia, welcome, or Patty.
Thank you.
Welcome to the show.
I appreciate you inviting me.
Well, it's great, and Penrickton Center is a wonderful place. It has a great public need, and you provide that need. But Patricia Obrzut was not always at Penrickton Center. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in St. Clair Shores.
Okay.
So I'm one of 5 girls, and lived in St. Clair Shores all my life, and went to school at St. Joan of Arc and then South Lake High School, and then went on to Eastern Michigan afterward for my undergraduate degree in occupational therapy.
And then beyond that, you went to?
I went to Wayne State for my master's degree. I started working at Penrickton Center and then went back to school while I was there to get my master's degree and worked there as the occupational therapist while I did that.
Okay, so you've thrown this occupational therapy word out there. What was it that got you into the idea of going to occupational therapy, and what is it?
Sure. When I was a child, I just enjoyed watching people help someone else. And I always knew I wanted to go into some kind of background where you helped others. First, I thought maybe firefighter. Then I decided to do something in the therapy area. And I have my 3 older sisters all went into different therapy sections of education. So one's an occupational therapist, one's a physical therapist, and I kind of followed her around. And an occupational therapist helps someone who's been injured or who has a disability learn to do things that they used to do, but maybe now because of that special need, they have difficulty doing it again.
So the occupation is not a professional occupation, but it's just daily living occupation.
Sure, like learning to feed yourself, learning to walk again, learning to hold something in your hand, learning to roll over, those basic skills that I think people take for granted until something goes wrong and you're not able to do that. So an occupational therapist helps you to learn to do those things again.
And so when you went to Eastern and then to Wayne State, what was the thing, what is the specialized classes that you can take to help you learn those things?
A lot of anatomy and physiology, a lot of learning about development and how a child learns to roll over, crawl, sit up, walk, and those steps, because if someone does have a disability or an injury, you have to know what steps to do first before you can learn to do some of the more complex things. So a lot of developmental activities and programs is what I learned in school.
Learn to crawl before you can walk.
Exactly, yes.
So Penrickton Center, and it's what attracted you to Penrickton Center for Blind Children?
Sure. I loved working with children. I always wanted to work with children. And Penrickton Center is the first job I got out of college. And luckily I interviewed right at the time they were looking for an occupational therapist. It was really hard to find a job working with children, and it just kind of fell into my lap. I always think it was meant to be. I've only had 4 jobs in my whole lifetime, and that was the first one out of college, and I've been there ever since.
And something special about Penrickton Center is not just children who are blind, but there's some other criteria for a child to be able to go there.
Sure. Yeah, all the children have to be either legally blind or visually impaired, and then the other special need that they can have is anything. A lot of our children have cerebral palsy, epilepsy, autism, developmental delay, any other type of disability qualifies you to be at Penrickton Center. The one thing that unites all of the kids is they're all either legally blind or have that visual impairment as well.
So as a parent who has a child who's blind or legally blind, and then they have these other things, what do they say? How do they cope with that stuff?
I think everyone deals with that in their own way. I think the hardest thing is in the beginning, you just don't know what you're supposed to do as a parent. And I think that's the one thing about Penrickton Center that is so enjoyable, is you can help parents teach their children that they can learn things just by simply adapting the environment, so that you're not thinking so much about vision, you're thinking more about those other senses, how to feel something, how to hear something, how to touch something with your feet versus your hands to explore something, or how to taste something, or how to smell something. So even learning to move, some of our children with cerebral palsy don't know how to roll over or don't know how to sit up yet. So what is it that's going to take those children to be motivated to move, and then all of a sudden they learn to roll over and can do those things. So it's really rewarding to get with the families and teach them just these little things, and all of a sudden they go, oh, that's how you get my kid to do that. And that's fun.
It's hard enough being a parent. I have 3 daughters, and none of them came with a user manual.
Sure.
And to have a child with a special need of being blind, and then this extra level of complexity, it's got to be that. So when people are looking for a facility, how does Penrickton differ from any kind of other places that are around the area?
Sure. There's nothing else really like Penrickton Center anywhere. We receive no state funding, no federal funding. We don't charge for our services. It's 100% free to families. So we get all our money through donations from the general public. And there's really no one else like us, even in Michigan, that works with children who are visually impaired with the other disability. And then we provide 3 main programs. So it's a daycare program, residential program, and consultation program. So families can bring their children just for the day, and the kids can stay with us during the day while we work on activities, or they can sleep overnight from Sunday through Friday. Or if a parent isn't interested in either one of those programs, they can come in and we'll just work with their child for a couple of hours and give them some suggestions on what to do with their child at home, learning how to set up their bedroom or their living room so that their child is learning. And there's really nothing else like us in terms of we don't charge for our services, where other agencies may work with children with disabilities, but usually it's a state program, federal program, or they'll charge.
Do you get grants of any kind or apply for grants,
So
or it's all donations?
We'll take donations from anyone. So if we qualify for a grant, we're going to write that grant. So for example, we have grants that we've written for to pay for horseback riding for the children. So they'll go horseback riding in the backyard. We've written other grants for music therapy or dance and movement therapy, but really our donations come from the general public, sends us $5 or $10, or they participate in a fundraising event that we're going to have. Or the nice part is people just stop by and drop off batteries or toys or clothes for the kids. I always say I've worked there 35 years and we've never bought toilet paper because we get all the toilet paper donated. So we get Kleenex, we get paper products donated, and then we don't have to buy those things. And the kids never go without. And there's so many nice people in the general public that if I put out, we need this, they'll just drop it off the next day, which is super, super nice.
Where physically is the Penrickton Center located?
Sure. It's located in Taylor on Eureka Road, between Beach Daly and Inkster Road.
And how many children do you service? Let's go through the different things you talked about. Is the day people, the kids who come in for the day.
Sure. We can have 21 children that come during the day and up to 33 that can sleep overnight.
That's 52. That's or 54. I can do that math. So I need some therapy for my math skills, I think. What age do the kids start coming in? What's the youngest you can take them, and how is there an advantage to get them younger versus older?
So the children can start as young as a year old, and they can stay till they're 13. And really, families hear about us from the general community, and so sometimes parents don't hear about us until their children are older, and sometimes they hear about us before they're a year old. And really, parents come and use our services when it works for them. So I've had children start on their first birthday, and I've had children start when they were 11. I've had everything in between. But obviously, the younger that the kids start in our program or use our services, kids are just sponges and they soak up any information. So the sooner I can give them that information, the more they're going to learn. But I've also had children who were 12 years old who came to us and they started learning as soon as they found out about us and were in our program. So
when you have a child who comes in, say at 2, who's blind, they're going to be there for the daycare type of thing. How do you start out? How do you evaluate them? What do you do? How do you assess them? And what kind of program do you plan for them?
Sure. Well, the one thing we have at Penrickton Center is we have different therapists and individuals who work with the children. So we have an occupational therapist, an activities director, social worker, nurses. So everyone kind of evaluates the kids in their area, but the goal is to just provide the children with activities and toys and objects where they can learn from those objects. And then after you're working with the children, even within 5 or 10 minutes, you can start figuring out, well, this child can hold something or this child can't hold something. This child moves their legs to kick, this child doesn't. And you start figuring out what they can and can't do, and then you start taking what they can do and finding more objects and activities that will cause that child to move or grasp even more. So one of the best stories I ever had was we had a child who came in with a parent for a consultation, and the parent was very challenged in finding anything that their child could do. And so then we start with what motion does any child have, and this child, obviously we all breathe, and when you breathe your chest rises and falls. And so we took a little plate and we put some marbles on the plate and put that plate on the child's chest, and just them breathing, the marbles started to roll to side on the plate, and within just 2 minutes that child started breathing harder so that the plates would roll, the marbles would roll even more, to the point where he was breathing so hard the marbles fell off the plate, and he kind of like looked like that was kind of cool. And then we put the marbles back, and all of a sudden the parent said, I've never seen him move that much. And it's just using what motion a child has to teach them that they can make something happen. And from that it snowballs into all of a sudden you can roll over.
So if a person has lack of use of one of the senses, what are the senses that we categorize?
Sight, smell, hearing, taste, and touch. And then we actually at Penrickton say there's also a sixth sense, which is movement. A lot of our children have physical disabilities like cerebral palsy, and so if you can't move, you're going to have difficulty learning from your environment if you can't pick something up or get to it. So we're working with all those 5 senses, but we also really want to get the kids to be able to move.
And I've heard, and if I'm wrong, I'm sure you'll correct me, that if one of the senses is diminished or not there, the others become more capable.
Sure, you just tend to pay more attention to those other senses. So we've had children who were deaf as well as blind, and so they're going to really pay attention to vibration. And you know, you don't pay attention to things vibrating just sitting on a piece of wood. You can feel your movements vibrate through wood versus carpeting. So at Penrickton Center, people are always surprised when they come by. We have little activity boards that the children will play on, and they're made of wood. And they're always looking, saying, why aren't the children sitting on the straight carpet? Well, carpet absorbs sound and vibration, and wood reflects sound and vibration. And so the kids actually go to the wooden surfaces more than the carpeted surfaces.
And is there a point when a child comes in, say a child who's blind and deaf, and like the child with the plate on his chest, do they start to get it?
Oh, absolutely. That child got it within just a couple minutes. Sometimes it takes the kids, you know, it could take them an hour, it could take them a week, it could take them a year. The nice thing is that every child I've ever worked with can learn something, and it's just whether or not you're setting up the environment the correct way for them to be able to learn. And so once you get that trick, they learn really quickly.
And the environment, as you said, is not just carpet, it's hard surfaces, and there's a bunch of other things here that you brought.
I brought a ton of things, sure.
Yeah, we're gonna wait.
Okay.
People have seen this, and we're gonna take a break.
Okay.
We're gonna play with some of these things,
Okay,
because I
sounds
think a lot of what you do seems to be playing with the kids, and by touching and tasting and smelling these things, that they get to be more adept and more learning and more capable over time.
Sure.
We'll be back in a little bit with Patty Obrzut from Penrickton Center for Blind Children. Don't go away. We're going to get to the, not that it hasn't been cool so far, but the really cool stuff that's here on the table. Don't go away.
It's easy to get caught up in the details. The day-to-day grind, numb to the noise. Going round and round and round. Deep down, there's something missing. A void inside. A hole to fill. A life lacking. Then, in a minute of clarity, it hits you. The aha moment. You're needed. Kids need you. Kids of all kinds. All these funny, rambunctious, sweet, attention-seeking, vulnerable bundles of energy. They need your love and support. Some have huge life hurdles. Poverty, disease, hunger. And they're reaching out for you. Around the corner, around the world. You are a Kiwanian at heart, a role model, a guide, a builder of dreams. Together, we are Kiwanis, passionate and strong, ready to move mountains or grains of sand. Imagine every child reaching their potential. The power to help is in you. It's not about us. It's about them. Do you hear the call? Kids need Kiwanis. Kiwanis needs you.
Welcome back to KiwaniTalk. I'm your host, Gary Gardner, with this episode talking about the Penrickton Center for Blind Children with the new Grand Poobah. Actually, what's your actual title?
I'm the executive director.
Executive Director, Patty Obrzut. And we're going to talk about some of the toys here. Now, during a break, we talked about some everyday household things that you can find. There's also specialized things that Penrickton Center has and needs.
Sure.
Let's talk about some of the everyday stuff and how those can be used.
Sure. I think what people forget is sometimes kids find the everyday things that you find in your house just as much fun as something you can buy in the store. So it's the combination of finding things that you use every day with some specialized therapy equipment that we have at Penrickton Center that really helps the kids learn. So for example, I brought a couple of things that people might recognize or not recognize. So these are magnetic toys that you can get at the toy store, and they just go together and come apart. And so with our children, learning to put things together and taking things apart can be difficult if you don't know how to grab something. So finding magnets that have holes in them so the kids can get their hand inside them and then learn to take the two hands and take it apart, while at the same time they're learning about shapes. So here we have a pentagon, so we have 5-sided objects, or I can find the squares and learning the difference between the two and that they'll stick together.
And I don't know if the mic picked it up, but not only is there the physical separation and the attraction of the magnet, but there's also a sound.
The sound that happens. Sure, and the nice thing is, and people are surprised, sets of these magnets can cost like $60 for us, and what we'll do is put out wish lists at Christmas that will tell the general public, these are the toys we would like for the children, and sometimes people will say, well, why do you want that exact toy? Well, they have magnets that have holes in them, and they have magnets that don't have holes in them, and we look for the things that someone with cerebral palsy can grab onto. And so we're really specific sometimes about what we want. And then sometimes we're not so specific, which everyone should recognize, the golf ball or the ping pong ball. But what's fun about both of these balls is they sound different when you drop them in something. So you either get that sound or you get that sound. And so the kids are learning that something is light, something is heavy, and it makes a different sound, and it can go in something or I can dump it out of something.
That's again, there was a distinctly different sound too. The ping pong ball bounced and had a different sort of effect inside of there.
Sure. And then this is a chime ball. So if you shake it, it's going to make a sound. And again, this is heavier than the golf ball, than the ping pong ball. But 2 of these kind of balls is about $16. And so we use these all the time. And then sometimes we buy things made of metal, things made of plastic, things made of wood.
So hold that steady for us. That looks like
I'll go ahead up,
looks like a giant disc.
It looks like a mirror. But the difference in learning that something made of metal can be round or something can be flat. But when we bought these are about $70 for about 6 of them. But it's important that, and these don't make noise when you shake them, and these do. So it's all about comparing and contrasting one toy from another. And even these are called play sticks. Let me grab a different one here. And they come in really small sizes and big sizes.
Okay, so hold those steady and then describe the one in your right, the red one. What is?
So this is a large play stick, the red one, and this is a small play stick. A set of these can be $50. The bigger one is actually harder for the children to play with because, again, it takes a bigger hand to hold on to it, where the little one is easier to grab onto. However, the big one is fun. You can put it together and build a car with it because you can use these circles for wheels. And so the kids start to learn how to build things and take things apart. Someone who has a physical disability like cerebral palsy will have difficulty opening up their hand and getting it around an object. And so what most adults will do is they just do it for the child and say, here, let me get that for you. Let me button your shirt for you. Let me get that toy and put it in your hand for you. And when you do that, you're actually teaching the child to be more dependent on you than independent. And so what we do at Penrickton Center is really create an environment where they don't need the adult to learn how to grab the toy because we have different sizes and different shapes. And all of a sudden they learn to play with an adult, but they also learn to play without an adult, which is really important because we don't want the kids always needing us to be active. We want them to do it on their own.
Part of what you have is that you have young children, and if you don't have the visual, the taste, or sticking stuff in their mouth, how aware do you have to be of, like a golf ball can be choked on, or how do you protect kids from that?
Sure, I have thin things and I have big things, and so it's really up to the different staff that are working with the child and the therapist to know this child puts things in their mouth, this child doesn't. And actually sometimes we want to teach the children to put something in their mouth. I have children who don't know how to feed themselves, they don't know how to hold a spoon. So if I take a little chocolate and put it on the end of the stick, which is really safe for them to bring up to their mouth, and they start licking it, I'm actually teaching them to hold a spoon, to bring the spoon up to their mouth to feed themselves. So there's a time and a place to teach bring something to your mouth, and there's a time and a place to not encourage that skill. And we try to do whatever's the most appropriate for the child that we're working with.
So if you have 21 kids who come in the day and 30-something who spend the night, how many staff people do you have? What's the ratio of students, children to staff?
Sure, there's one adult for every 3 children, and then that's during waking hours, and then that doesn't include volunteers that we have coming in to work with the children, and it doesn't include the therapists that are working with the children. So like our music therapist will pull a child out and work with them one-on-one, and then the person who's watching the 3 children is now only watching 2 children. And then with those children, she might do something on the computer, she might do a play activity, do a group activity, those kinds of things.
Okay, so I just have a question. How can a child who's blind use the computer?
So we have adapted switches that work with the computer. And then again, remember our children are either legally blind, they may not be totally blind, so they might be able to see when something lights up or something goes dark. So on the computer, there might be bright colors on a black screen, it might move, it might have music, and so the kids can activate a switch, and then that switch will make the computer do something. Or sometimes it'll tell a story and the kids can use switches to actually complete a story.
So they're not actually surfing the net, that they're using the computer in a different way.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so when you have a child who has been there for a couple of years, how do you challenge them more and more, and what's the levels that you hope to achieve before they graduate at 13?
You know, every child is different, and so what you do is just work on what comes next. So I'll still remember we had a little boy in our program, Isaac, when he started, he didn't sit up and he didn't walk, and when he left, he was doing the laundry and walking over to the dryer and pushing the right buttons and thought that was fun to do the laundry. where other children we've had who maybe have learned to roll over when they didn't know how to roll over, and that took them 5 years. So every child is just a little bit different, but I can say that all of them have come in and learned something before they left.
You mentioned at the beginning that you get your funding from donations and you have some fundraisers. What have you got coming up? We're filming this at the beginning of April of 2023.
Sure.
What have you got coming up in the near future?
Sure. Well, we do a spring picnic every year, and it's always the Friday before Memorial Day weekend. So this week it's the 19th in 2023, and it's just an open house, so anyone can come to our backyard, and we'll give you a tour of Penrickton Center.
And the address
is 26530 Eureka Road in Taylor. Or you can give us a call if you have a question, 734-946-7500. Or you can check the website, which is Penrickton, PENRICKTON.org, because we put all our events on the website. So you can come down to the picnic, have a hamburger or a hot dog, which I just want to mention all of the food is donated, all of the activities are donated, and it's just a way for the community to see how Penrickton Center is helping children with disabilities.
And you also have a special a road type of thing.
Sure. The first Sunday in June we always do, it's called Ride for a Reason. We've been doing it now over 20 years. And we get anyone who rides a motorcycle can come out, and we start in Dundee at Cabela's. Everyone donates $25 to ride, and they ride from Dundee to Motown Harley-Davidson here in Taylor. And all of the money that everyone donates from riding that day goes to Penrickton Center.
I would imagine that if a child who's blind, who gets a particular stimulus from noise and vibration, do the kids get to ride the bikes, or they get to hear them, and how about that?
They do. Actually, some of our parents have ridden in the ride with their child when their child was older. And then we also have a group of motorcyclists that come to us once a year, and they bring sidecars. And the children actually go for sidecar rides in our parking lot, and they go super fast. The kids have a great time, but they're riding around in our parking lot having fun.
So you've got all that. So you mentioned volunteers. How important are volunteers to Penrickton Center, besides the donors, but people who may not be able to pay but want to help?
Sure. I mean, we have volunteers that help at events like our picnic or the ride. They might hand out a bottle of water, or they might we might have games for kids, and people might be running the games for us. Then all of our yard work at Penrickton Center is done by volunteers. So if you're a gardener and you'd like to come pull a few weeds or plant some flowers, we get all of our landscaping help from volunteers. We have individuals who help do office work. We have people who paint the walls, clean our toys. So if you're, take down our Christmas decorations, put up our Christmas decorations, anything that a volunteer, we look for what you're interested in. For example, I have a gentleman who likes to repair toys. So when things break, he takes them apart, fixes them, and gives them back to us. And that way I save a little money. I don't have to buy the new toy.
And if anyone wanted to volunteer, they reach out to Penrickton Center for Blind Children by?
They can either call us or they can email us. Charlene's our volunteer coordinator, but if she doesn't answer the phone, you just ask for anyone and we'll put you in contact with Charlene, and then we just find out what you're interested in doing, and we try to hook you up with an event or a time for you to be able to volunteer. Sounds
like an amazing place, and I laud you for your longevity working for Penrickton Center. I'm not going to say how long you've been there. It's been a while. You must have started when you were 7.
That's what we like to say, sure.
And I want to thank you, Patty Obrzut, Executive Director, Penrickton Center for Blind Children. Great organization. Check it out on the web at penrickton.org. Call them, volunteer, be part of it. Money, time, it all helps. Thank you for coming to the show.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for watching KiwaniTalk. I'm Gary Gardner. See you next time. Bye-bye.